Hello, football fans. Welcome back to the Scuffed Football Podcast. This is week 8. This is Noah. I'm Ted. We're here to cover the previous week, talk stories, scores, fantasy, gambling, and we're going to get mad at some odds makers today. I might start yelling. Don't judge me. I guess to start, we'll talk about some games that happened this past week. The place that I really want to start is the Panthers and the Bucks. First off, after the Panthers shipped off Christian McCaffrey this week, middle of the week, which I thought was kind of strange. Usually that's some Monday, Tuesday administrative stuff. Don't let the dude practice, which already took me by surprise. But I was very surprised to see that after trading both McCaffrey and Robbie Anderson, that the Panthers looked so, I don't want to say good, but serviceable on offense. They really looked like they had something cooking.
Decent.
It wasn't blowing the doors off of anybody, but I mean, it was better than I expected him to look. The other part of that too that surprises me is like the Bucks defense is pretty good. I know their offenses looked really pedestrian this year. They've lost a lot of players to injuries and all that, but I really thought the Bucks defense was better than to hold a team with basically no skill players on it to letting up 21 points. And then there's a lot of problems with the Bucks only scoring 3 points in a football game against the Carolina Panthers, man. What the hell?
Agreed. Again, like you had said, I definitely didn't expect the Panthers to look this good, especially after trading off, their franchise piece, which is just something else entirely. I could never. But again, I didn't expect to see them this good. Again, like you said, I thought the Bucks defense was a lot better. They brought back almost everyone. They do that pretty often for defense, especially. So I was expecting just them to show up, I guess, maybe not even have to play like their best. But, coming into this week, if you had told me the Bucks defense will play like pedestrian, I would still think, okay, well, the Panthers are still going to lose, knowing that they shipped Christian off. So it's definitely not where I thought the Bucks were. And again, their offense, just 3 points and just in the fourth, it was not what I thought would be happening, considering the star offense, the star pieces they have. So there's definitely something going on there. So
it's crazy to me too, because beginning of the season, I know that's 8 weeks ago, but we talked about we thought the Bucks were kind of going to run away with this division. We didn't think the Saints would be very good. We knew the Panthers were going to be pretty bad. We thought this was a very winnable division, and the fact that they're kind of letting some other teams make a name, I thought that their defense would be good enough to hold them through the season, even if the offense struggled. I thought the offense would be good enough this season, even if the defense struggled, right? Like, they've got enough pieces on both sides of the ball that if one of them is decent, they're going to make a playoff run. But the fact that they're 3-4 at this point in the season, tied with the Falcons for the division lead, Mariota and the Falcons are tied with them at 3-4 at this point in the season, man. Like, there's some serious problems in Tampa Bay. I don't even know what they do to fix it at this point. Like, I don't know what pieces you go and get. I don't know if this is demands a coaching change, but there's a lot of issues in Tampa.
Right. And it's interesting because, last week we had discussed the Rams and what they could do to maybe fix it. And, these are two teams that we considered Super Bowl contenders. We expected them to be back. So even putting up just, a lowly 3, even in a divisional, conference game, that just, now you've just let the Panthers somehow have that tiebreaker over you. And now if they win their next game, and you have the same record, we could see the Bucks not even in the playoffs.
Right. It's crazy to me that the Saints have looked as bad as they have. The Panthers have looked as bad as they have through 4 different quarterbacks now this season. But I guess between preseason and regular season, there's 4 different guys that have taken snaps. They're 2-5, and they're still within reach of the division. It's not an impossible stretch to say they make up a game and tie for the lead. I know they have to play again, but at this point they own the record against the Bucks. If it comes down to a tiebreaker, you know what I mean? Crazy to me. I do want to circle back a little bit though and talk about that Christian McCaffrey trade. So being here in Carolina, right? I heard a ton about this trade. I didn't think it was necessarily the worst thing in the world for the Panthers to trade him away. If it were me, in my head, I would have kept him because I think even if you go through a full rebuild, he's a solid piece to build around. Obviously, he's talented. He's been running the offense for years. What I didn't agree with, for me personally, outside looking in, was the haul that they got back for him. I expected him to be good enough to get a first round pick. I know he's a running back, but he's got so much production. The dude touches the ball 400 times a year, and he gets injured every year to still get 400 touches. Like, it's incredible to me, the production they get out of him. But talking to Panthers fans, all of them seem to be pretty encouraged that they can still go and beat a Tom Brady team without Christian McCaffrey, and then to get the picks back that they got even without the first. What do you think of the trade? What do you think of what they got?
Again, me personally, I wouldn't have traded Christian. Again, like you said, he's a great piece to build around. We've seen him be an all-star in the Pro Bowl, like, since, coming in and proving himself. So again, the haul that they got, I definitely don't agree with it. I think that Christian McCaffrey is, for example, we'll say Christian McCaffrey. I think that, he's better than Deshaun Watson. And the Texans a year ago were like demanding like 3 first-round picks. And like, obviously no one met their standards, but people were, offering something at least there. So you definitely could have gotten at least 1 or 2 out of Christian. Like, I think that he's the better player. So I don't understand why the Panthers didn't ask as much, but maybe there's some sort of altered plan.
I think the other part of it too was trading him within the NFC, right? I mean, like we mentioned, the Panthers aren't necessarily out of the playoff race. I recognize that at this rate they can go 6-11 and probably still have competition for their division. You know what I mean? But to trade him to a team like San Francisco, who is already like a strong playoff team, I'll say skeptically, and then to give him another piece like McCaffrey, just I think makes them that much better. I mean, he had a pretty decent week for only 2 days worth of practice with the Niners. I imagine what he gets when he's got a full week of practice in. I find it very strange that they were willing to trade him within the NFC when it's not unrealistic that you could catch them in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. Again, him going to the Niners, I think adds a really, big piece. I don't think they've had like that kind of quality of a running back, so I'll be excited to see what they can do with him once he gets his legs under him. But yeah, he had a decent week, so maybe it's his. We've known Christian to be carrying that offense for so long for the Panthers, so maybe in an offense that he can actually play within, maybe he'll do something more. So I'd like to see Christian McCaffrey in the playoffs.
Absolutely, man. Guy's incredible. I definitely want to see more of him. Moving on to some other games, I'm going to stay in the division and stick with the Falcons, but not for the Falcons. They played the Bengals this week, and I was super impressed. The Bengals actually looked like a real competitor again this week. Joe Burrow played out of his mind. That dude found every open target and then some. He was throwing the ball deep. He was throwing it short. He had good vision. He played so well. And I think most notably, it's a positive sign for the Bengals that they were able to keep the Falcons out of it when we've seen so many times this year the Falcons just have the ability to score at will late in games. What's your takeaway from the Bengals? What's this game mean to you?
Again, this is the Bengals that we saw last season, at the end of last season, starting to cook teams, starting to make their way and getting some confidence. So it's interesting that, I'm glad they kind of won this game, obviously. Again, I'm glad they look like an actual team. I'll be interested to see because we also know that the Falcons they're not the best team. So, maybe it was just a lucky day for them. But I don't want to think that. I like the Bengals. I like Burrow. But it was nice to see them kind of play like an actual team. So.
Yeah, and getting everybody involved, too. I mean, it feels like to have looked through their box scores from previous weeks, I mean, it's either Mixon gets involved or T. Higgins gets involved, or like it never felt like a combined piece on offense, but it feels like everybody got their chunk today. Everybody did their job, and the offense looked really solid. I don't know where it's been for 6 weeks, but I mean, they definitely brought it this week, and to hold the Falcons out of it means good things on both sides of the ball, in my opinion. So. The next one I've got is probably not surprising for this podcast, to be completely honest with you. I want to talk about Dallas and Detroit. So I managed to catch the first half of this game. It was very much a snoozer on offense through the first half, but the big takeaway from the first half, at least, was that the Lions' defense looked good. I know the Cowboys weren't necessarily helping themselves, but being up 6-3 is not, I guess, what we would expect from a Lions first half. I mean, obviously the bye week last week, 2 weeks ago, was up against the Patriots and they got shut out. But before that, like offense was their bread and butter. That's what they were doing all season long. But to hold Dallas to 3 points, I thought was something. I don't know what to take away from it though.
At the same time, we've known that the Lions aren't going to be a free win. So I think that, again, they don't usually start off as hot, or I feel like, they don't have that many scoring drives in the first half. But so seeing them jump out to even just, a 6-3 lead for the Lions, it was pretty impressive in general. But then they kind of just fell apart. So,
Yeah. On the other side of that, it was encouraging for Cowboys fans to see Dak Prescott throwing a ball well. The first half was pretty sloppy. I'm not here to, say he played a perfect game, but the second half, he did put it together. He did look like he was in shape enough to win a football game against more than just the Lions. I guess I just don't know what to take away from not being able to do it the whole game. I don't want to put too much on his shoulders, obviously, with coming back from an injury and a weak first half, but I don't think it's going to be super long before we start seeing Dak Prescott perform at a high level again and actually beat some good teams.
Yeah, I agreed. I think it shouldn't take him more than 2-3 weeks to get back into it.
The last game I have to talk about, as far as at least a whole game, is the Steelers and the Dolphins last night. So obviously super encouraging to see Tua back on the field again. I think it makes the Dolphins competitors again. But I was kind of surprised that their offense didn't really have a ton of production. The run game was nice, which I know is a Shanahan staple. It'll be really good for them if they can put both passing and running together at the same time. But their offense just really didn't generate a whole lot. They kept the ball, they drove well, but it just, I don't know, it felt like they never completed a whole drive.
Yeah, agreed. We've seen the Dolphins for the better part of with Tua, taking snaps to be an explosive team and, be scoring in these high punches. So yeah, the production was a little bit weak, against not a really good defense in the Steelers as well. I think that's what kind of also was a takeaway. They just didn't perform that well, I guess. So it'll be interesting to see if they can turn around this coming week. But yeah.
The other part of this game that kind of intrigued me is I think the more that we keep seeing Pittsburgh's quarterback struggles makes me ask a whole lot of questions about what they do at quarterback. We mentioned it a bit last week that I don't think either one of us is ready to commit to Trubisky long term, right? We're not writing him off entirely, but he's a hard guy to build around. But Kenny Pickett continues to make not so great decisions, throw into traffic, throw at guys who are definitely not open. I appreciate his gall to go for it, and I do still think that he has a higher ceiling than he's shown us, but I don't know what the Steelers do for the rest of the season, if they want to try and fight, compete, and win some games, or if they're just kind of, let's see what we've got in Pickett and then decide what to do with next season. I don't know where they're at this year to know what kinds of decisions they make at quarterback going forward.
Agreed. I usually don't really pay attention with the Steelers. Again, the last real quarterback, not real, but the last, good quarterback, I feel like, was Ben. So I don't know, this quarterback carousel of some sorts, it's just interesting. But yeah, I don't know. They had it right with Ben, and now you have two, decent, talented quarterbacks, and you can't do anything with them. So
yeah, I know that their skill position guys aren't where they want them to be. Their offensive line isn't what it has been for Ben Roethlisberger even. And I know that salary cap was far too enormously high to go and get those pieces for these guys this year. But they're only 2 games back in the division, right? The Ravens and the Bengals are 4-3. The Steelers are at 2-5. I don't think it's unreasonable for them to make a push. I don't think they'll win, but I wouldn't necessarily count them out of trying to win some games and coming back, especially if you get some division wins. But I don't know if that gets better because you've played Trubisky, who's put together a better year so far, or if you just really wanted to see what you have in Kenny Pickett, you play him out, acknowledge you're going to lose some games this year, and see what you can do for next season. I guess there's just so many questions back there that I don't know what the Steelers do this year or moving forward, and I think they've got a lot of decisions to make. all I hope is that it doesn't turn into a hot seat for Tomlin. All right. On to some other like bigger talking points, more so than individual games. The first thing is that the Packers, man, the Packers. Losing to Washington is obviously a big deal. We were down on them before, but they continue to lose to bad teams and just not look good. I don't, man, it's just so embarrassing. I watched it in bits and pieces. I can't tell you that I sat down and watched a whole chunk. No.
Did you see how they finished the game?
Yeah. Man, I just can't, like, Rodgers is so much better than he's shown us this season. I've watched him win with some absolute scrubs on that offense, and he just can't do it. Their defense is bad enough to let a backup quarterback in Washington run over them, although, you know, maybe Taylor Heineke shouldn't be a backup to Carson Wentz, but that's a different story altogether.
Heineke is throwing some dimes.
I think Heineke's better than the fact that they needed to go get Wentz this offseason, but I don't make decisions in Washington. I just, at this point in time, where do we see the Packers ending up? I mean, at this rate, I don't see them playing well enough even to get a wild card spot. I think they ought to chalk up this season, to be completely honest.
I mean, I'm kind of on the same boat there, which is, you know, again, we talked about how our expectations of, you know, the Bucks and Rams have gone, but like we also didn't talk about, you know, the Packers in that same group. Like we also said they might be Super Bowl contenders, and now they've lost 3 in a row. And, you know, it's not the offense we thought we were going to see. It's not Aaron Rodgers that we thought we were going to see. It's not the same MVP Rodgers. So at this point, I don't know what you can do. Like I would kind of almost start writing them off, but, you know, maybe if they turn it around and, you know, finish up, you know, just winning out and ending 12-4, I'd be, you know, but
even then, I mean, I don't think Rodgers has ever been a superb performer in the playoffs. I don't know that he's got the roster that's going to help him beat playoff teams. I mean, I think you've got to take a realistic look at this season and acknowledge that, like, you're not playing for a whole lot. I mean, the realistic end goal for this season, I think the way that they've started the first 7 games is you got to be proud of yourselves for even making the playoffs, let alone doing something there. I don't know that that's a whole lot to continue investing in.
Right.
Another team that we kind of have juggled expectations for was the Chiefs. Obviously, we both started really high on them. We kind of tapered it a little bit at the beginning of the season. They kind of had a rough, not super impressive start, but the Chiefs went off this week. They beat the 49ers, who have a much better defense than to allow 44 points to anybody, but the Chiefs just go and do it to you every single time. Again, like I mentioned last week, offensive play calling was good. Schemes were good. Andy Reid is still an offensive-minded genius. How deep are the Chiefs running? Do we think they can compete with the Bills at the end of the season? Like, who's stopping the Chiefs?
Again, this is the same discussion we've had before, where, you know, we're ready to write the Chiefs off. Oh, they'll take a step back. You know, they're not as explosive, but then they, you know, put up points like this again, and then they lose a game maybe they shouldn't have, and, you know, we write them off, and then they win again. So you can, like we said before, and we've said it again, we'll say it again, you can never write the Chiefs off. Again, like I thought they would win, but like I thought the Niners would put up, you know, or hold them to less points. But yeah, again, just the Chiefs in general, and it sucks because I sat McCole Hardman. I sat him. I would have won if I put him in, and I didn't. Oh gosh, not the 30 points.
The deep ball looked good. The short passes looked good. Even their running offense looked good. The Chiefs are putting together something special, and it feels like they're getting better and better every week. I genuinely, like, while I still believe that the Bills are a better team in a, you know, 7-game series, right? Like, the Chiefs this week would have beat the Bills last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess, when they played. The Chiefs looked good. Although I have to be, you know, completely fair that Andy Reid gets a buff after the bye week. He's done it since the Eagles. He's got some ridiculous record after the bye, so you knew they were going to win the game regardless. But that's beside the point. So the next thing I have is I want to talk about the Seahawks. I know we called the Chargers a pretty weak 4-2 team, and I know that we've given a lot of credit to the Seahawks for being able to score. But they won pretty handedly against the Chargers. They continued to put up big numbers and points. Their offense continues to look explosive, and now they're beating teams that we think are maybe a little higher in the standings than the wins they've already got. Realistically, the way the season's going, the Seahawks look like the division favorite to me. I know the records are within a game or two from top to bottom. I mean, they're winning at 4-3, and then the Niners and the Cardinals are at the bottom at 3-4. But like, the Seahawks look like they are significantly better than every team out west.
So again, we've seen them outperform our expectations. We thought they'd be a low team, and here you are winning games and pretty handily. But again, like I don't think that I would say they're better than some teams. Like, yeah, I do think like this week Seahawks could definitely have beat like the Niners, the Rams. I think we saw the Cardinals kind of round back into form. So I don't know if they would have been able to beat, the Cardinals, but I agree. They are probably a division favorite there. Again, we haven't seen the Rams and the Niners really show too much, but again, we're waiting to see on the Niners at least. So
I was gonna say, I mean, like the jury's still out on the Niners. I'm not here to write the Cardinals off altogether, and I know that the Rams have the talent to make noise if they have to, but the Seahawks look to be the most consistent team week in and week out. Like, it's hard for me to believe that they aren't the favorites for this division at this point in time, even if we thought they'd be scraping the bottom and we gave credit to all three of the other teams. I also want to talk about an impressive performance from the Bears Monday night. I think the Patriots stock was improving. We stayed pretty high on the Bears that we were impressed but not floored. This was a big win. The offense looked more put together than I think it has all season long. They scored a ton more points. I think they put together more points than they did in their last 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. If not, it's pretty close. But Bears looked really, really, really good. And what do you think about them for getting towards the playoffs at the very least?
Again, this is a division we're not really so like strong about in our opinions. Like, again, we had thought that we had it figured out. It was going to be Packers, Vikings, and then we thought both, again, the Lions and the Bears would probably be the weaker, and some of the weaker teams in general. And yesterday we saw it was scary to watch that.
Yeah.
I felt it was weird. I was like, am I watching the right game? So again, yeah, like I would almost put them in the same category of like the Vikings. I know the Vikings are silently actually really good, but I put them in like the 2 right now for that division.
Man, I know they've got ground to cover, but I don't think a wild card spot is out of reach. I mean, we talked about, like you mentioned, the Rams being down, the Bucks being down, the Packers being down, and realistically, the Bears record only has them a game behind all three of those teams. I think they're playing better, and if their offense can look like this on a more consistent basis, they can pretty easily beat all those teams as far as what we've seen. I don't think it's unrealistic to see the Bears make a push, try and get there, especially if they can pick up some pieces at the trade deadline here. I also think the Cardinals are back in form, like you mentioned. I didn't mean to gloss over that. I do want to hold the brakes a little bit because this is about the point in the season where we see them start to take a downturn. I can joke about Call of Duty all I want, but at grand scheme of things, they get to the middle of the regular season and their season just starts to taper off. I don't know if it's the coaching or lack of creativity. I don't know if it's actually Kyler Murray with Call of Duty. I don't know if it's injuries. But I thought it was very hopeful to see that right before the halfway point in the season, getting a star wide receiver back allows them to go and win on Thursday night. Score a ton of points and genuinely look really good on offense.
Agreed. So I was excited for Nuke to come back, and he did. And obviously watching the Cardinals just explode all of a sudden was a really good sign for them. I think that obviously they missed their star number one receiver, someone who could always just like put it in the area and he'll catch it. Again, they didn't have that with anyone else. We don't have a lot of DeAndre Hopkins type caliber receivers, except for the named ones. But again, like it was good to have him back. Again, I'm not saying that Cardinals contender right now. Like again, that's not. I'm just happy that they seemed and looked like an actual playoff team.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, I mean, the division becomes super winnable with everybody kind of in it being kind of down. If DeAndre Hopkins by himself is enough of a difference there that their offense can look this good every week, I mean, I really think that they can make a run for it. like I said, I know I want to give credit to the Seahawks, who have looked consistently good to this point this season, and I'm not here to give the Cardinals all the credit in the world for just one win with a solid offense. But I mean, I do think that it would be hard to count the Cardinals out entirely. DeAndre Hopkins very clearly made a difference, and I'll be excited to see how much that continues moving forward, or if it was just a flash in the pan. The other thing I know you wanted to talk about was the benefits or effects of where your bye week falls in the season. I know that I brought up on several occasions the Lions bye week. I thought it would be helpful after a shutout loss to the Patriots that, you know, they could come back and put something together on offense. And clearly it doesn't look like they did a whole lot with that, only scoring 6 points against Dallas. But I know that teams like the Eagles, the Bills, even the Chiefs who get theirs this week may start to tire towards the end of the season rather than having a bye week later on. How much impact do you think the bye week has? What impact do you see? Where's your ideal spot to land your week off?
I guess it's just interesting how, you know, it's just the way that they have the bye weeks. I guess I would prefer a bye week that's maybe later on. You know, it depends on like where the state of the team is. So like, you know, if I'm the Bills, if I'm the Vikings, Eagles, Rams, like all these 4 playoff teams right now, except for maybe the Rams. But like, you would prefer to have a later week so you can rest up for the playoffs and get everyone healthy. So having it early is just kind of, I feel like it might end up screwing you just because, like, you know, you've had 7 weeks in a row and, you know, you got to keep going for the rest of the season and grind out. But again, that's why I would prefer to have one later on. Like, granted, you might slowly start losing energy towards the end or closer to your bye week, but, you know, you'd be able to rest up and recharge.
I don't know. I hear what you're saying, and it's hard for me to disagree. I mean, I've never gone through a full football season, don't get me wrong, but I also know that, like, with the team specifically that you mentioned, I mean, particularly the Vikings, the Bills, the Eagles, who are at least looking confident for a bye week in the postseason, like, I would kind of think that you'd want the consistency towards the end of the season to make sure you're still playing for it when it matters. You know what I mean? At this rate, like I said, the Eagles are 6-0, but the Giants are 6-1. The Vikings, if I'm not mistaken, are also 5-1.
Yeah, 5-1.
Yep. So, like, you know, at the end of the season, you may have to compete a little harder to make sure you're winning games week after week. To take a week off where you're letting that team catch up, it may be difficult. You know, I would get kind of scared of like a week 12 or 13 bye week if it meant you put together 12 solid wins in a row, but now you're only still 1 game ahead of somebody else who could be taking that extra bye week away from you with the bye week in the playoffs. I think I see value to both, but I don't know. It's definitely interesting to see where all of them fell. And I think it's pretty impressive that, like, just by random chance, the NFL schedule put teams like the Eagles and the Bills, who are leading their conferences, off on the same week, so that you can't call that an advantage come Super Bowl time if that's where teams end up being. You know what I mean? Definitely a nice happenstance.
We never saw the Eagles be this good. We never predicted it. So, you know, like,
right.
Granted, it's convenient, but, you know, right now.
Right. I like I said, I don't think they did it on purpose, not by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, if that's the case, you put the Bills and Chiefs on the same bye week every year until Mahomes and Josh Allen retire. Like, that, obviously they didn't do it on purpose, but it is neat to see it line up so that we can't really measure the impact of that come the end of the season. Just kind of interesting. One other big thing that I really wanted to talk about was, in fact, the trade deadline. We're coming up on it within the next week. And I guess the big things that I want to talk about are not only who we could see moving, but what teams need to buy or sell, or what boat we think some teams are in. For me, I know I mentioned before we started recording, I 100% expect a Patriots quarterback to get shipped off. If there's anybody in the market for a quarterback, I really think Mac Jones is on the market. We watched Mac Jones get benched this week for Zappy. I still don't know how to say the guy's name. I don't want to watch a Patriots game ever because I hate them. But genuinely, they've got 2 quarterbacks with a name on their roster, or at least 1 quarterback with a name who's underperforming the other guy. If a team's in the market for a quarterback, I don't find it unrealistic that Mac Jones could end up somewhere else. Similarly, I think it's time for the Jets to start trading quarterbacks, not because they're sellers, but because they're buyers. I think that there's value for a guy that we've watched play pretty well, like Joe Flacco. And if you're going to keep him on the bench behind Zach Wilson anyway while you're still winning games, turn Joe Flacco into another piece. One interesting place that I think it might be interesting to see them end up, quarterbacks from either of those two teams I mentioned, would be Cleveland. I don't think that the 2-5 Browns expected to be here at this point of the season. I know that they are awaiting the return of their actual starting quarterback, but I wouldn't see it impossible for them to find a cheaper option to replace Brissett if you're going to bench him in week 12 anyway. I just keep your eyes open. That's all I'm saying. Is there anybody in particular that you see moving, any groups that you see teams might be willing or wanting to ship off?
Again, we had talked a little bit before about Russell Wilson. I wouldn't actually be surprised. I know you put all this money into Russell Wilson, and you're 2-5, and you're not playing where you would think you would be. Because again, when we had the beginning of the season, we said we think that we would see them in the playoffs, maybe not win a Super Bowl, but make some noise for a wild card spot. And now we're just seeing absolutely nothing. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do something. Maybe get a cheaper quarterback.
I think it would be hard for them to pick up a quarterback specifically just because of what they paid Russell Wilson. But I wouldn't necessarily be surprised to see them do something. I've actually, not to transition too far ahead, but I do have like a couple lists that I put together as far as a buyer's list, a seller's list, and then just teams that I feel like need to do something, but I don't know if it's buy or sell. I put the Broncos on my sell list. I think that they're at the point in time in their season where it makes more sense for them to start shipping something off. I still think that they would have to do comeback work at this point to make up the record to get to just where the Chargers are, and the Chargers are 2 games behind that division lead. I don't see them really making noise in their division. I think it makes more sense to sell off some pieces, have a salary cap, go into next offseason and make some money. But I also know that the Broncos are somewhat aggressive. They want to do something, and it might make sense for them to actually buy some pieces. I wouldn't be surprised, trying to give Russell Wilson something, but I really expect them to sell off some pieces if they've got them here at the deadline. Also on that list are the Packers and the Texans. Texans are pretty obvious, I think, mostly just save some money. They're not really competing. They're not exciting to watch. If they've got pieces, go get some value, put some effort into the draft, especially as that team tries to get younger and younger. The other one I have strongly on my sellers list is the Green Bay Packers. We talked about them a little bit earlier. They do have pieces of value, but they're not winning even with those pieces of value. My thought is that the only real option that you've got is to trade some bigger names away, some bigger contracts away, see if you can come back with some younger talent that maybe Aaron Rodgers can mold on offense, maybe fit some, younger, faster pieces into that defense that should be more solid than it is. I really see the Packers selling some stuff off to try and cut back a little this season.
Agreed. I'd say we had talked if we were kind of putting them away to the side. So yeah, I'd definitely sell. I'm gonna try to get some value back and maybe restart again. But again, it's not working what they have now, so definitely sell.
Some buyers, on the other hand, first is basically just the top half of the AFC South. The Titans, the Titans and the Colts are both playing a little bit better than they started this season. I know we ranted about why aren't these teams better, more than enough, but I still don't think that either one of them is super impressive. But if you have aspirations to at least make it to the playoffs, you got to beat the other one first. I don't think it's unrealistic that either the Titans or the Colts could go and find another piece to add. I kind of did the same thing in the AFC South with the Bucs and the Falcons. Again, they both just got to beat each other. I don't know if it's super realistic that either one of them buy, just because they both are so weak and maybe don't look like deep playoff aspirations, but I wouldn't see it impossible for one of them to try and get over the hump for the other one. One team that I've got that I think is pretty notable is the Chicago Bears. I know that sounds weird coming out of my mouth because they have a worse record than the Packers, and I said the Packers need to sell. But I think the Bears have some hope that their young pieces are actually good enough to generate, especially after an offensive week like this. What do you think about the possibility of them maybe picking up a receiver or another weapon for Justin Fields?
I mean, like, yes, agreed. I think they should in general and anyway. But I don't know. Again, we had talked about that division being within reach now, like, even with the losing record like that. I mean, if I was the Bears, I would see maybe if you got someone, you could see like what your ceiling could actually be, even if you don't, obviously make the Super Bowl or, but you could I'd definitely buy and give Justin Fields some weapons there or a little bit more, see what else you can what kind of noise you can make. So
I think the other interesting piece to that is, too, that we're watching the models now, especially with the Eagles and Dolphins this season specifically, where a young guy on a rookie deal leaves you salary cap for other things. You can put all kinds of talent around these guys because the quarterback's contract is cheap. I think that week in and week out, Justin Fields has proven to you that, like, he can be that kind of guy, too, if you put the right pieces around him. I don't think it's a bad idea for the Bears to do that early, even if it doesn't turn into Super Bowl aspirations this year. I don't think it necessarily would benefit them to sit still when realistically they could go get another piece to start building even for next season, where you still want to capitalize on that rookie deal. Right. I also put the Rams on my buy list. Another similar concept where they just got to get over the hump to play against their down division. But I also think that the Rams have enough talent that maybe adding another piece, whether it's a lineman somewhere. I mean, we obviously see the impact that Von Miller is having in Buffalo after having that impact last year in Los Angeles, but maybe it's a defensive lineman they go get. Maybe it's not a skill position guy like these other teams we were talking about, but I think the Rams could benefit from a purchase that maybe gets them back into shape.
Agreed. I think they do need something, maybe even adding another receiver, after losing Robert Woods. But again, they need something. So definitely I would buy. Again, I think it's if they add the one piece, right? They could definitely just easily just take off and, but it'll be interesting to see.
The last one I actually have on my buy list is the New York Jets. First off, they're 5-2. Let's talk about the Jets being this good for a second because nobody saw it coming. But like we said last week, I don't think that they're a super impressive 5-2. I don't know that they've gone and beaten a lot of good pieces. But at this point, I mean, if the season ended today, the Jets are playing they have the record to play a home game. It's only the Bills that are ahead of them in the division. They'd be a wild card team playing a road game. And yes, I understand how the NFL works, but their record is good enough to be playing a home football game. I don't know what it is they go and add, but I don't think it's unrealistic the Jets go and buy a piece, put something else there to get even better when they're already competing.
Oh, God. I don't even want to have this discussion. Yeah. So, yeah, we talked about the Jets, always ragging on them. I see. This is the thing. I don't know if I would buy. I guess you would in this situation. See, again, kind of like the same thing. See what noise you can really make. Again, we've seen them be a really weak 5-2. The past 5 games that they won in those games. They played a backup quarterback in 4 of them. So it's kind of interesting to see what would happen if they face an actual really strong team. So I guess we're gonna see. But again, just to get to that point, I mean, close the gap between the Jets and the Chiefs. You have to get a piece at least. You can't. They're not in the same conversation right now. Maybe adding a piece would help. So
right. I mean, I know they went and picked up James Robinson from Jacksonville to replace Breece Hall with his ACL injury. That poor guy, man. He was doing a lot for that offense. But I mean, I think that it behooves them too to go out and get another piece to replace the production that you lost in Breece Hall. I realistically think that how many moves they make or what moves they make is going to be based on how their front office views their 5-2. If the Jets are full of themselves and they think they're really good because they're already 5-2, you're not going to see them make a whole lot of difference. But if they recognize that some of their wins are weaker, they still need the talent to, actually win some playoff games that at this point it looks realistic that they get into. I don't think it's unrealistic for them to take a piece, man. Jets should go and get them some. The last list I have is some maybe teams. These are teams that, like, based on where they're at in the standings, where they're at with their records, I don't know if they should be buying, selling, sitting still. I don't know where they're at. The first one is the New York Giants, if we're sticking in the same city. Giants are 6-1. They're obviously playing good football. Their offense hasn't looked necessarily superb, so I think it would benefit them to go get some offensive pieces maybe, but I also don't know how much they're trying to continue building around Daniel Jones or if he's a placeholder until they can go find another young, cheap guy. If they want to stick things the same, if they want to sell off some pieces, ride the high where they know they can get big trade value back, I don't know what the Giants are doing.
I like where they are, which is weird because, we didn't expect the Giants to be this good. They're outperforming themselves. So, I guess if anything, now you see, you're a decent 6-1 team, you got a defense, like almost, I guess I would start buying, it doesn't depend on which position, just get some help to kind of, again, like we said, bridge that gap maybe between you and the Eagles or even you and the Cowboys. But I definitely buy for the Giants just because of how, the NFC is so close right there. But again, I would buy.
That's fair enough. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see them because I want to believe that New York is going to make a move, but I just don't know what kind of move they're making. Similar boat for me, at least, is the Chargers. We mentioned the Chargers being a pretty weak 4-2. They obviously lost this week to put them down to 4-3. I don't know if they feel that the Chiefs are within reach. I know they played a good game against the Chiefs, even in a loss. I don't know if they feel close. I don't know if they feel like this is a realistic run. I don't know if they're buying, selling. I don't know what they intend to do with this team. My thought process, if it were me, would probably be to sell and have a big offseason where more guys are off of contract and you don't have to give up assets to do it. If you trade it off now, you get some younger pieces. Like I mentioned earlier, Justin Herbert's on a cheap rookie deal. It's the time to build around him. You put all the tools in front of him while you still got the cap space to do it. But I think that gets easier for them if they wait until the offseason to do it rather than trying to do it here in the midseason when we haven't necessarily watched them look so great.
Agreed. I guess, I don't know. I think I would sell just because, like you talk about the gap between the Chiefs and the Chargers. I still think that, even though the records don't show it, the Raiders are still a stronger team, even being at a 2-4. So again, if I were the Chargers and I was thinking like what we were thinking, then, I'd be like, we're not really doing anything, even though our record might say 4-2 or 4-3, so I'd definitely sell, I think, just to clear up those pieces.
Yeah, fair enough. The last one I had there is the Raiders. If we're going to be realistic, I don't see them doing anything. But I do think it's notable that they are a better team than their record indicates. The AFC is down enough that I don't know that playoff aspirations are necessarily entirely out of the question. To wonder if you think the Raiders might also do something at the deadline here.
Right. Again, we were ready to say the Raiders were probably down and out, and then just seeing almost, except for, the top Super Bowl contenders, like everyone else just hasn't played as well. So, even all those records, even being 2-4, like that's still within reach. So I don't know. I feel like they're still not going to beat the Chiefs at the end of the day, I don't think. So I don't know, but it would be interesting to see them make a move, but they could definitely, make some noise for a wild card, but they're not going to, beat, the Bills or the Chiefs even with one piece. So.
Absolutely. Like I said, realistically, I don't see anything happening, but I don't know they're in a position where they can sit it out and not even think about it. So I guess that wraps us up for the previous week's, at least game content. I want to start moving into some fantasy. One big thing for me, obviously, is to mention that the Chiefs and the Chargers are on bye weeks this week. All of the Chargers offense is on a roster somewhere. I'm very sure of it. So obviously you're going to have to replace them this week. And if that means missing out on a week like this week with, I don't know, a guy like McCole Hardman, you may have left on your bench for 30 points, that replacement, that production is going to need to get replaced somewhere. Another big topic for me for fantasy, at least, is what we expect Christian McCaffrey's impact to be with the 49ers. Obviously, he didn't come out and do nothing this week, but San Francisco's offense is really dynamic. They spread the ball around. I think a lot of McCaffrey's value when he was with Carolina was the fact that he was the only guy getting the ball. They didn't really have a quarterback that they could trust to get it to their better receivers. They really had to rely on the run game and to hit him out of the backfield, even on like short passes. But with San Francisco, I mean, they've got guys like Deebo Samuel. They got an offense that was already functioning. So I'm wondering what impact you think McCaffrey is going to have fantasy-wise now that he's with a new roster and may not have to carry the workload so hard.
I think we're going to see, yes, maybe he's going to have a little bit less touches, but having that star power, of Deebo still there, Kittle, like there are other stars now that like he doesn't the defense needs to plan for. So it's not just about Christian where, back in Carolina, it was, just stop Christian and we win a game. So it'll be interesting to see, but like I expect him to kind of just fulfill the same role. I think he's obviously taking first team snaps. He's gonna be their starter. So I expect him to still be an all-star. Yes, he might not have as many touches, but I still expect him to produce and keep that same level.
I think it'll be really interesting how they use him. I mean, I know Garoppolo is not a quarterback that goes deep down the field very often. Like, I think he's still going to get involved in the passing game, but I think like it'll be such a significant decrease in touches because there are so many other talented pieces there that for me, like if he were on my roster, he'd still be in a starting spot, but he might be closer to an RB2 rather than an RB1 at this point, just because of how significantly his touches are going to decrease. I mean, infinite amount of value, you give a guy like that the ball. If he has the ball less often, there's less that he can do with it. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about is your strategy for, weirdly enough, defenses and kickers. I think at this point, we've gotten halfway through the bye weeks. I believe that if not half, then close to half of the teams have had their bye week already. For me personally, I know one of my strategies in the middle of the season every year is to start ditching my second kicker once my starter has finished his bye week and comes back, and replace him with a skill position guy that is a potentially bigger earner. Same thing for a second defense, although I know you've talked previously that, the way you pick your defense is who's got the best matchup for the week. How do you feel about replacing roster pieces or changing the way that your bench looks with what positions are still sitting and waiting?
So again, you brought up like the two things that like fantasy wise, I don't care about. I don't care about having a star kicker. Like at the end of the day, like if you're on a football team, like generically, you're going to have chances to kick the ball at some point. So like, it doesn't matter. Like, obviously I don't even know who I have right now. Okay. I just know he produces. But so kickers wise, like, yes, I kind of just like, if I need one on the bye week, I'll pick him up. And then if he does a little bit better than my normal one, then I just say, okay, I'll keep him. But other position pieces, like I don't like to replace my receivers. I think they're big. I'll pick up, I like usually again when two like a backup, and that's how I usually make sure that I still have like two decent, someone always to pick up if someone has a bye week. So I don't like dropping people. I would prefer to even pick up someone on a waiver wire. Maybe if it's going to be like 4 points, it doesn't matter. Maybe just grab him for that. But I wouldn't drop him like, I wouldn't pick up the 4 points if it meant losing Christian. Like I would never.
Fair. Yeah. I guess like for me, quarterbacks, defenses, and kickers are the places where you get the most value from dropping and picking up something else, right? I mean, by this point in the season, we know what quarterbacks are consistently producing in fantasy and which ones aren't. I've gone through my bye weeks in both of my leagues. I have Jalen Hurts and then one of my leagues, the backup is Matt Ryan, who is a significant drop off, right? So now that the Eagles have gone through their bye week and I can consistently keep Jalen Hurts in every week, I get more value from dropping Matt Ryan, who I know I'm not going to play again all season long, and going to picking up another running back, another receiver. For me, the value is dropping those things that, like, your starter is very clearly defined and you don't need a backup for him once his bye week is gone. I just think it's interesting to see how, like, the dynamic of your team, especially on the bench, changes as bye weeks have passed and you no longer have to worry about these guys being out. Any other significant fantasy trends you noticed? Anybody really stand out? Anybody you're looking at for the upcoming week?
Not really. I'm just waiting for some injuries to come back.
Okay. Yeah, I know we're waiting on a handful of them. I mean, the big one for me obviously was the suspension for DeAndre Hopkins, and whatever guy picked him up in the draft is paying off 6 weeks later now. But yeah, a couple guys that are injured, couple guys we could see come back. I guess I just want to see this trend of explosive offenses continue too. The Chiefs obviously had a better week this week, but I mean, we talked about the Bears, we talked about the Bengals looking better. Like, these explosive offenses make it a whole lot better and a whole lot more competitive in fantasy week after week, and gives you more options on the waiver wire because there's just too much value at receiver positions. All right. I guess the last thing we have to get to is gambling. I think it's the first time all season that Noah and I both had winning records. Both of us win 8-6. That brings Noah to 43-54-1, myself at 48-59-1. We're getting that. Wait, we can't both have an 11-game split. Hold on. Yeah, we can. No. Wait a second. I had to do my math wrong somewhere, but that's all right. Well, I'll fix it by next week. Anyway, nope. Yeah, I did. You were 35-58-1 last season, and somehow I added 6 and turned it into 54 instead of 64. That's what happened here. All right, I fixed it. I solved it. So 43-64-1, 48-59-1. I don't know about you, but I'm super excited for this week because I'm taking a vacation to states where sports gambling is legal. I'm going to lose some money this week. I'm pretty excited. To get started, our Thursday night game is the Ravens at the Bucks. The Ravens are 1.5 favorites on the road.
I don't know. This one's tough, I feel like.
Had you looked at this game at the beginning of the season and asked me then, I'd have shit my pants and just not known. At this point in time, like, the Ravens are still playing solid football, even if it's not great. The Bucks just keep going down and down and down in value every week. I'm taking Baltimore.
I agreed. I think I'm gonna go. Actually, I think I'm gonna go Bucks, just because it's at home. I think they're gonna bounce back. But again, I'd also expect to fully eat my own fucking words. So,
all right. Next one I have is the Broncos at the Jags. Jags are 2.5 favorites at home. For me, I'll take that spread. I'll take the Jags even -2.5. The Broncos just haven't looked very good to me. I think the Jags have played a bit better at home than they have on the road, and they've played better against more solid opponents than the very boring Denver Broncos.
Agreed. I'm going Jags here.
Easy enough. I have the Bears at the Cowboys. The Cowboys are 9.5 favorites. I've been preaching it for weeks. Big spreads are hard to cover. The Bears just had a very explosive game. Cowboys had a strong second half, but a very weak first half. I definitely think the Bears can keep this one within 10. I'm taking the Bears and the points.
Agreed. Unfortunately, I think the Bears just kind of keep this within, and I think this is a little disrespectful to the Bears. We've seen them be able to keep it close, so I'm going Bears, but a little disrespect thrown to the Bears.
Yeah, a little bit. I've got the Raiders at the Saints. Raiders are 1.5 favorites on the road. This one's a tough one for me. I think the Raiders are a better football team, but the Saints seem to have, like, really streaky, either really hot or really cold weeks. I don't know what this last week was for them, though, to be honest, because they still scored 34 points against the Cardinals. I'm going to take the Saints plus points and at home. It just feels like the safer bet when I have absolutely no idea.
I'm going Raiders just because I think that the Raiders are the better team. Simple as that.
That's an easy way to pick it, but I think too hard. All right, I have the Panthers at the Falcons. The Falcons are 4.5 favorites at home. For me, I don't think what the Panthers did last week was super sustainable. Again, we've watched the Falcons score in flurries at the end of games. I feel pretty confident that the Falcons can win this game by more than 5.
Agreed.
Easy. More big spreads. I have the Steelers at the Eagles. Eagles are 10.5 favorites at home. This one's a struggle because
I know how you feel about these, but I'm just going Eagles all the way. I think the Eagles can easily win this by 11. Like, what?
I know. Okay, again, I know that the Eagles are 11 points better than the Steelers, and probably then some. I really do know it. Okay, but 10.5s are so hard to cover. I'm taking the Eagles because I think they are that much better than the Steelers, but that it's still a hard pick just because the spread is so big. Next one I have is the Dolphins and the Lions. Dolphins are 3.5 favorites on the road in Detroit. For me personally, I'd like to believe that a second week in a row is going to help Tua's ability to produce on offense. Plus, they got their run game started, and the last 2 times we've watched the Lions play, their offense has really struggled. Dolphins' defense is significantly better than most. I think this one's an easy Dolphins pick for me.
Agreed. I'm going to pick the Dolphins. I will say, though, we've seen the Lions be in games they shouldn't. So at the same time, I'm kind of scared that they're going to be in this game. We have said they're not going to be a free win, but, we'll see. Hopefully it is against the Dolphins. So, yeah, I pick.
All right. Next one I have is the Cardinals and the Vikings. Vikings are 3.5 favorites at home. Excuse me. Like I said, Call of Duty comes out this week. Vikings are still 5-1, even if they're doing it quietly. I'm taking the Vikings, and I'm not thinking about it twice.
This one's a hard one for me. I think I'm going to go, but I think we see the Cardinals put up a decent second week. I think the return of Nuke is very significant. I'm actually going to switch. I'm going to go Cardinals.
Okay. That was good because your microphone cut out just as you made your pick, so I genuinely didn't hear it was. I'll happily take the fact that you repeated it and gave me the Cardinals on a change of mind. I'll take it. Next one I've got is the Patriots and the Jets. Patriots are 1.5 point favorites on the road. Stop trying to sell me on the Jets, dude. Jets are 5-2. Jets are winning football games. The Patriots aren't that good. The New York Football Jets.
Agreed. I got to go Jets here, and that just sucks.
When was the last time you could genuinely pick the Jets over the Patriots and feel good about it? I have the Titans at the Texans. Titans are 2.5 favorites on the road. For me, the Titans seem like significantly better than 3 points against the Texans, but that division has proven to us over and over and over again all season long that divisions in that game, or games inside that division, are going to be absolute, complete, and total slop, and it's not even worth gambling on. I'm going to take the Titans just because I think that's what's better on paper, but I don't expect this game to go any sort of expected.
Agreed. I got to go Titans, but I'm not paying attention to it whatsoever.
Oh, not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. All right, I'm about to yell at odds makers if you're ready. Giants at the Seahawks. Seahawks are 3-point favorites. Giants are 6-1 against the spread this year. The only game that they have lost against the spread is against the Dallas Cowboys. The Giants continue to win football games, both outright and against the spread. The Seahawks don't have that good a defense, and the Giants' defense is better than the Seahawks have seen all season. Stop disrespecting the Giants. I'm going with New York.
Agreed. Yeah, I got to go Giants again. We haven't seen the Seahawks be good enough to beat this Giants team. So I got to go Giants.
I'm hoping for that one to be a good game because I know that the Seahawks can score. I know the Giants defense is the best part, so I hope it looks super competitive, but you cannot tell me that you're still giving the Giants plus 3 points when they are 6-1. I have a snoozer for the next one. Alternatively, I have Washington and the Colts. Colts are 3-point favorites at home. Another snoozer I don't care to watch. I think the Colts are the better football team. I think Washington stole a win last week, so I don't see them necessarily doing it again. Colts for me.
I guess I got to go Colts, but I wouldn't be surprised if this somehow ends up the other way. So
I'm ready to lose. It's just going to be slop. It's fine. Really good game for this one. I have the 49ers at the Rams. I think we have the ability to learn a lot here. 49ers are 1.5 favorites on the road. For me, I'm taking the Niners. I think they were the better team to begin with. I probably would have even taken them in this game 2 weeks ago. And then to add Christian McCaffrey, I think just adds a whole nother level to their offense. I don't see the Rams' recent level of play beating this 49ers team.
Agreed. Unfortunately, I do have to take the Niners. Again, the addition of Christian McCaffrey, it's just, I think it's going to be a little bit too much star power on one side and not enough offense for the Rams.
All right. Another big spread for Sunday night. Packers at the Bills. Bills are 10.5 favorites at home. I usually say how difficult these are. This one isn't close. Bills by 1 million.
Agreed. You know where I stand. You guys all know where I stand on the Bills. So let's go Bills.
All right. And then Monday night's game could be pretty decent. I have the Bengals at the Browns. Bengals 3-point favorites on the road. For me, this is the Bengals. Unless we see the Browns shop for something super special, I don't think they're as good as the Bengals are, especially if they can keep up. The Bengals can keep up the form that they put together this past week on offense. I think I'm taking Cincinnati.
Agreed. Again, we haven't seen the Browns that we thought we were going to see. So, and Bengals just had a really good win. So, I'm going Bengals.
Easy enough, man. Easy enough. All right. So after next week will be the halfway point in our season with the new 18 weeks season instead of trying to figure out a halfway point at 17. We'll cover not only the same stuff we always cover, including games and all that, but maybe we'll even get in some MVP races and, where we realistically see divisions ending up when we can reassess at the halfway point. Forgot my normal, standard, typical lines, so let me backtrack for a second and tell you that lines are provided by FanDuel as of Tuesday afternoons. They are subject to change by game time. Please gamble responsibly and remember that we're not providing gambling advice, just solely providing our picks for games. If you or a loved one has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Beyond that, I think that kind of wraps us up for this week. I think we touched on everything we needed to and just excited for some football this week. I'll actually get to, sit down and watch it and not play video games instead.
That's what I like to hear. You got to watch it if I can't,
Yeah, there we go. All right. Well, that wraps us up for this week. And then we'll see you guys again next week for week 9. Have a good one.